Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be going over this really interesting talk from General Conference 1956, April, by Milton R. Hunter. He was in the, let me just double check, he was in the, of the First Council of the 70, okay? And I wasn't looking for this. This is just another one of those things that just kind of popped up that caught my eye. What I was originally intending to do was to do a video about Catholicism. We talk a lot about Judaism on this channel. Sometimes other churches come up, and I've wanted to do a more thorough investigation into Catholicism, the beginnings of Christianity. Um, I was specifically thinking about how in our church we have the different offices of the priesthood, and how at least the Aaronic priesthood, it corresponds obviously to the Aaronic priesthood in the Old Testament. We don't necessarily call it the same things, like the words bishop, deacon, teacher. Priest is still the same, even though Jews, they refer to it as, if you're a priest, you're a Cohen. That's like the word is Cohen, or if it's plural, it's Kohanim. So we've kind of explored that idea, and I was thinking about how Catholics, they have deacons, priests, teacher. Well, I don't know if they have teachers. They have bishops. I believe they also have reverends. So I wanted to see how they viewed it, how they viewed their own connection to, the Old Testament and before Christ, like how they believe that they're the continuation of those things, and just wanted to look at that. I think it's important to look at all these different groups. Um, I think it's important for different reasons. For one, it helps us understand our own religion better. I think if we see the big picture and what happened. You're going back in time and you're trying to see what happened. Why do we have these different groups? How are we related? Where can we build bridges? Um, and it's also beneficial because the more that you know about other groups, other religions, um, the better chances are that you'll be able to connect to someone in your life that might be of that religion. And then in the millennium, we know that there's still going to be all these different religions, at least in the first part of the millennium. Through time, uh, people either convert or those earlier generations will pass away. But it may be important for us to kind of understand other religions so that we can relate to them and do our work in the millennium and now too. Anyway, so as I was searching for Catholic in the scripture citation index, I came across this talk, and this mostly has to do, I for some reason I haven't really gone too in depth into the Lamanites, to you know the Lamanites, the descendants of Lehi here in the Americas. We've talked a little bit about the Pacific Islands and how it's been said by presidents of the church that the descendants of Hagoth, the Nephite, are in the Pacific. Okay, including, I believe, including New Zealand, but definitely Tonga, Samoa, and probably others. The Polynesian islands. So, but we haven't talked that much about the Americas. This was one of the main places that you have, um, where you have the scattering of Israel, and you have a group that came here to the Americas. We've looked at groups that were in India, a couple different groups in India, Afghanistan, Africa, and others. Right? I've been doing that, but obviously the one that has the most to do with our church is the one that came here to the Americas, because I'm in the United States, so here in the Americas. They're not part of. Well, I guess we don't have very much information. I don't know if at some point Lehi lived in what was the Northern Kingdom before it was destroyed. I don't know if he, came down. Excuse me. I don't know if he came down uh, from where the northern kingdom was for the safety of his life, and came to live among Judah in the kingdom of Judah. We don't know. I don't think. If we do, then please let me know. But I've never heard that. But um, we know that he wasn't taken captive or scattered by the Assyrians. He was among the Jews in Judah. We find out in the Book of Mormon that excuse me. We find out in the Book of Mormon first that he's from Joseph, but then if you look in, I'm just going to do it here. If you look in Alma chapter 10 verse 3, it specifies that he's from Manasseh. It says right here, and Aminadi was a descendant of Nephi, who was the son of Lehi, who came out of the land of Jerusalem, who was a descendant of Manasseh, who was the son of Joseph, who was sold into Egypt by the hands of his brethren. So this is where we learn exactly who Lehi and his family descends through. Now, someone either in the comments or possibly an email had pointed out that Ephraim was among them as well. And I, I knew I had heard that before, and I was having a false memory, I think, because I thought I had seen that in the Book of Mormon. I searched the Scripture Citation Index, and I was like, why can't I find it? I was having a false memory. Maybe I had heard this earlier in my life. I tried to find the commenter or the emailer, but I wasn't able to find who said this. But thank you if you're listening, because we had the blood of Ephraim also there. It wasn't just Manasseh. I'm going to read. This is from the Book of Mormon Student Manual, chapter 3. And it's for First Nephi 7:2. It says Ishmael is of Ephraim. Okay, because we know that Lehi, it wasn't just their family. They got Ishmael and his sons and daughters to come with them so that they could multiply. Okay, the Book of Mormon is sometimes referred to as the stick of Joseph, Ezekiel 37:19. Why don't we just read that really quick? Saying to them, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I will take the stick of Joseph, which is in the hand of Ephraim, and the tribes of Israel, his fellows, and will put them with him, even the stick of Judah, and make them one stick, and they shall be one in mine hand. All right. So, continuing here, or the stick of Ephraim, DNC 27:5. Lehi was a descendant of Manasseh. Ishmael was a descendant of Ephraim. The prophecies of Jacob, found in Genesis chapter 48, were fulfilled as Ishmael's family, Ephraim, came to the American continent with Lehi, Manasseh. And you know what this chapter is. This is where Jacob is giving, or Israel, Jacob, he's giving his blessings, his like final blessings to his sons. And he talks about how Joseph would flow over the wall. In fact, why don't we let's look for that. The angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads, and let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. That's in 48:16, and then 49:22. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. And in our church, we interpret that as them coming to the Americas and inheriting the Americas as a land of promise. Okay, so so it's interesting. It's interesting that this is how it happens. Okay, Elder Erastus Snow, 1818 to 1888, of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, discussed the importance of Ishmael's lineage. Quote, Whoever has read the Book of Mormon carefully will have learned that the remnants of the house of Joseph dwelt upon the American continent, and that Lehi learned by searching the records of his fathers that they were written upon the plates of brass, that he was of the lineage of Manasseh. The prophet Joseph Smith informed us that the record of Lehi was contained on the 116 pages that were first translated and subsequently stolen, and of which an abridgment is given us in the first book of Nephi, which is the record of Nephi individually, he himself being of the lineage of Manasseh, but that Ishmael was of the lineage of Ephraim, and that his sons married into Lehi's family, and Lehi's sons married Ishmael's daughters, thus fulfilling the words of Jacob upon Ephraim and Manasseh in the 48th chapter of Genesis, which says, "And let my name be named on them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the land." Thus, these descendants of Manasseh and Ephraim grew together upon this American continent. That's in Daniel H. Ludlow, A Companion to Your Study of the Book of Mormon, 1976. Okay, so it's interesting that we had both Ephraim and Manasseh there. I think normally you kind of view the Book of Mormon people as primarily being from Manasseh. I don't know if that's the correct way of viewing it, but that's typically, I think, it's like Manasseh became kind of like the dominant, um, I don't know, lineage. I don't know. An interesting thing that I heard when I was doing my video about um, the Jewish priests and uh, temples outside of Israel, how, in the Book of Mormon we had temples in the Americas. Someone mentioned that on a different, I think, channel. I don't know if it's Book of Mormon Yeshiva. I can't remember. But someone had mentioned that it's possible that Zoram was from Levi. And so therefore maybe through Zoram's posterity, they still had um, Kohanim that were serving in the temple. But I don't know. I'd have to look into that, but that's just something that somebody commented. So okay, so let's keep all of this in mind. Okay, and let's go to this talk. Now, this is going to have to do with Guatemala and the Mayans. Specifically, what are they called? The Quiche Maya race. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But let's take a look at Guatemala before we read this, and I think that'll help it'll help open our eyes as to what's going on with Guatemala, and it may back up this talk in what he shares here. So, in the church, Guatemala is pretty high up this list of number of members. Okay, so in the number one spot is the United States with 6.7 million. The next two that have over a million, the only other two that have over a million, are Mexico first, and then Brazil. Okay, number 2 and 3 spots. After that, it's the Philippines. So now we're in the Pacific. Okay. After that is Peru and Chile and Argentina, all in South America. And then Guatemala is so we got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's in the number 8 spot in the church. The number 8. Okay, that's really high up there because look at this. They have more members than Nigeria. Nigeria has a ton of members. They have more than Canada, the UK, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, and then all these other countries, Spain. Okay, there's a lot of countries, and Guatemala is at the number 8 spot. So if you look at the percentage of the LDS population to the national population, Guatemala has 1.6%. 1.6% of the Guatemalan population are members of the church. Okay. In the United States, it's 2%. In Mexico, it's 1.1. So Guatemala is higher if you're looking at percentage. It's higher than Mexico, Brazil, Philippines. Not as high as Peru, and definitely not as high as Chile. Chile is 3.2. That's really high. They're higher than Argentina. Let's sort this by percentage. Maybe that's the best way to go about it. So Guatemala is right here. I'm just going to highlight it. Um, now, all these all these countries up here, these are small countries, right? So, for example, Tonga, the national population of Tonga is 105,000. But they have the highest percentage of LDS, which is 64%. 64% of Tonga, the country of Tonga, are members of the church. That's astounding. That is astounding. So anyway, you look at these countries, these are all small countries. The first big country that you come across um, is Chile. And Chile is the one that has 3.27. Uruguay has 3.14. Um, Fiji is 2.4. New Zealand is 2.3. United States 2. El Salvador, Peru, Honduras, Bolivia. Okay, so the fact of the matter is Guatemala, it kind of stands out. In terms of absolute numbers, they definitely stand out, but also in terms of percentage of the national population, they also stand out. Let's look at how many temples they have. Guatemala they're going to have 4. Okay, they have 2 that are currently dedicated. They have 1 announced here. It looks like these are both Guatemala City temples, and then 1 that's under construction up here near Coban. It probably is the Coban temple. When you compare that to the surrounding countries, Belize doesn't have any. El Salvador has 1. Honduras has 2. Nicaragua 1. Costa Rica 1. Panama 1. I know that's not like the best way to compare it, but Venezuela, excuse me, Venezuela 1. Colombia, a much larger country, 3. Ecuador 2. So Guatemala, it stands out. Okay, it's like no matter how you look at it, Guatemala does stand out. So it seems like something may be going on there. I looked at this Wikipedia article just for some additional information. It says since the 60s and particularly during the 1980s, Guatemala has experienced the rapid growth of Protestantism, especially evangelical varieties. Guatemala has been described as the most heavily evangelical nation in Latin America. And then it goes through and it talks about, some more stuff, evangelicals, Pentecostals, Presbyterian Church. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has grown from 40,000 members in 1984 to 164,000 in 1998. Now, let's look at that more current figure. So in 84, it only had 40,000. And as of right now, they have 284,000. 284,000. That is rapid growth. That is very rapid growth. Okay. And hence the temples. Hence the temples. Okay. Now, interestingly, like I said, I started this video by wanting to do something about Catholicism. Well, it has a little table here, and the Catholicism there is going down, down, down. In 1960, it was at 91%. In 2015, it's all the way down to 45%. It's just like consistently gone down. So this is going to tie in to this talk. Okay. Uh, Before we read the talk, one last thing. I'm sorry, we'll get to it. Okay, so we're talking about the Quiche, formerly spelled Quiche with a Q instead of a K, also called Quiche Maya. Mayan people living in the Midwestern highlands of Guatemala. All right, so let's look at the map. So the Midwestern highlands. So I don't know if that's kind of like this area. Put down in the comments if you served a mission to Guatemala or know somebody that did. The Quiche had an advanced civilization in pre-Columbian times with a high level of political and social organization. Oh, by the way, I should have said this at the very beginning. I do not really care about the debate between whether the Book of Mormon took place in in the Midwest of the United States or whether it happened in Mesoamerica. There's like this big thing between there's like these two groups. I don't take a stance at all. Okay. So if this turns you off because you're like a heartland person, I understand. This could still be valuable though, because even if it was in the heartland, I'm sure that they migrated down into South America, so this may still have relevance to you. But anyway, just so everyone's clear, I don't have like an official view. I don't. It's just like something. It doesn't interest me. It's cool if you're interested in it. I'm not. Anyway, archaeological remains show large population centers and a complex class structure. Written records of the Quiche history and mythology are preserved in the Popol Vuh and in a number of other colonial documents and chronicles written down in the Quiche language shortly after conquest by the Spaniards in 1524. Um, okay, so they had some of their culture preserved in the Popol Vuh, after the conquest by the Spaniards in 1524. Okay, so back to Milton R. Hunter. He says, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to read. Okay, recently I had the privilege of touring the Central American Mission. Its headquarters are in Guatemala City. Now that's interesting, the Central American Mission. So back then in 56, of course back in 56 there weren't as many missions, but the headquarters of the Central American Mission was in Guatemala City specifically. I am thoroughly convinced that there are prospects. Wait, some of the wording here is weird. I'm thoroughly convinced that there are prospects, are unusual success in this mission. I'm happy to report that under the able leadership of President and Sister Wagner, the proselyting work is going forward rapidly and successfully. The missionaries are laboring faithfully and enthusiastically. There was an average attendance of 229% throughout the entire mission tour, which fact indicates that the missionaries had done an unusually successful work in preparing the saints and investigators for the conferences held during the mission tour. I congratulate President and Sister Wagner, as well as the missionaries of the Central American Mission, for their intelligent efforts and the high quality of work that is being done. May God's blessings continue to attend them. I'm going to skip the next paragraph. I was especially grateful for the privilege of touring the Central American Mission because of my intense interest in the Book of Mormon and in the Lamanites, or Native Americans. You guys, I'm gonna have to change some words here because otherwise I'll get in trouble. Um, Perhaps there is no part of either of the Americas that has as many full-blooded Native Americans residing therein as do some of the countries in Central America. This fact is especially true of Guatemala. Now that's interesting. That's interesting because I was actually just reading this article on the Interpreter Foundation, and I like the Interpreter Foundation. They're a group of LDS scholars, and I was reading one where it seemed like the author was trying to downplay um, the importance of literal bloodlines. I mean, ultimately, no, it doesn't matter because it depends on what you choose in this life. It doesn't matter if you're a full-blooded Gentile; you can still be adopted into the house of Israel, and we've done a lot of stuff about that, right? But he was trying to it seemed like he was trying to downplay uh, that literally having the blood of Israel, uh, that mattered at all, like at all. And I think it still does matter. I think that the Lord works through a system of order, and it has to do with the physical and the spiritual. So I think that there is still importance, and he does still do things according to that, although it doesn't determine your outcome in this life. Everyone still has agency, but I think he still likes to do things according to a certain order. And so people that have more of the blood of Israel, whatever that means, are more likely to accept the gospel. So anyway, uh, I noticed when I was in Spain, we had a lot of immigrants there from both Central and South America. Um, I noticed that Bolivia, which is a South American nation, they seem to have more indigenous people, as well as maybe Brazil. As far as Central America, I can't remember very much. I met people from all these different countries in Central and South America. They were all there. They were all there in Spain. Um, so anyway, I can't remember too much about meeting anyone that was Guatemalan, but I know that I did. Anyway, so he's saying here this fact is especially true of Guatemala, that they're less mixed than the rest of Central and South America with Spaniards. Um, in that country, approximately 60% of the people are full-blooded Native Americans, or indigenous peoples, whatever. They are primarily of the Quiche Maya race. These peoples have refrained from marriage with um, white peoples primarily because they believe that their Indian blood, oh, dang it, their indigenous blood and their people in general are equal, if not better than the Caucasians. The, this is these older. You got to be careful with these older talks and documents and stuff. Oh, tricky. The parents among the Quiche Maya people regulate the marriages of their sons and daughters, just as did the parents in ancient Israel. It is their purpose to see that their children marry within their own people and preserve their own religion and culture as far as possible. The Quiche Mayan indigenous people have a great heritage and an unusual culture. They are a very religious people. Their religion became definitely paganized following the Book of Mormon period. However, a study of their religious beliefs and practices readily reveals the fact that the roots of many of their religious practices extend back into Book of Mormon times when the true gospel of Jesus Christ was had by their ancestors. Following the Spaniards' conquest of the Quiche Mayas during the 16th century, the Catholic padres soon found that they could not stamp out the indigenous religion. Thereupon, they imposed as many of the Catholic beliefs and practices on the indigenous religion as the natives would take, making the Quiche Mayan religion of today a conglomerate. And it actually, okay, I don't know if it was here, but I think that was something that I meant to read. That maybe it was in the Wikipedia article. Traditional Maya religion persists through the process of enculturation, in which certain practices are incorporated into Catholic ceremonies and worship when they are sympathetic to the meaning of Catholic belief. Indigenous religious practices are increasing as a result of the cultural protections established under the peace accords. The government has instituted a policy of providing altars at every Maya ruin to facilitate traditional ceremonies. So this is kind of like, again, this is kind of like the Pashtuns in Afghanistan, that they claim that they're descended from Israel, although they are Muslim, but they have a special code. I can't remember what it is, but it basically is similar to Judaism, and they actually adhere to that code before they do Islam. So there was like the example that in their special code, they excuse me, they're forbidden to eat camel, which is not forbidden in Islam, but it is in Judaism. So they defer to this like Jewish code. I can't remember what it was called, but that's not what this video is about. So it sounds like kind of like a similar process here, where you have one religion that's taken over kind of by another, but remnants survive and kind of mesh into the conquering religion. So, okay, he continues, it is my personal belief that the Quiche Mayas of Guatemala are as directly descended from Book of Mormon peoples as any of the Native Americans of the Western Hemisphere. Now, he does emphasize here that this is his personal belief. So take that for what you will. Okay. I normally tend to side with any apostle or general authority or prophet's belief. Um, and that's not saying that they're always right, right? But I take the advice of President Nelson where he says, whenever a prophet, well, he's talking about a prophet, whenever a prophet says something, instead of putting a question mark behind his statement, put an exclamation mark. Or he also said that he never questions when a prophet is talking as a prophet or when he's talking as a man. And I think you can generally apply that to any general authority, although the prophet has more authority, obviously, and is the only one qualified to receive revelation for the church. But I don't tend to, and I don't think it's just being a blind sheep. It's just that I trust them and I trust their hunches, and if it's wrong, then they're going to be wrong about just like menial little things that don't really matter anyway. At least like they don't matter to our salvation. So I don't get caught up on that stuff. Okay, so through my research and my personal contact with these people, I've learned that they have many traditions that have a kinship to the Book of Mormon teachings. This fact holds true in the written works, such as the title of the lords of Toton Ikapan, the Popol Vuh, and the annals of the Chukchikas, as well as in their oral traditions, many of which have been handed down from generation to generation to the present day. The fact that many of the Quiche Mayans do not speak Spanish but have retained their native tongue has made it possible for their traditions to be carried forward unpolluted to this day. And this is back in 1956, so I don't know how language has changed over time. If you were in Guatemala, just put it in the comments. I had been informed that the Quiche Mayas of Guatemala still retain many of their ancient traditions, some of which evidently had their roots in Book of Mormon times. And so when I received the assignment to tour the Central American mission, I wrote to President Wagner and requested his missionaries arrange for me to interview some of the old Quiche Maya in at Tatanicapan. I advised the president to have the missionaries make arrangements for me to interview someone who was well informed on the traditions of that people. In accordance with my request, when I arrived at Tatanicapan, I found that the missionaries had engaged the services of a man named Jesus Carranza Juarez. Mr. Juarez was a very intelligent person. He not only spoke Quiche Maya, but he also was very apt in the use of the Spanish language. He had been initiated in all the rites and rituals of the Quiche Maya religion and had a thorough understanding of the traditions of that people. For these reasons, he was an ideal person to interview. Since I do not speak Spanish, I asked one of the missionaries to act as an interpreter. Oh, lucky for that missionary. By the way, interpreting is not, I don't know, maybe some people have a gift for it. I do not. It always got me flustered and it was very stressful. It was very stressful. Um, but that's just me. I said to the missionary, do not give Mr. Juarez any lead questions that might indicate to him the kind of answers that we desire to receive. I want to know the exact and accurate traditions of his people. And so I would suggest that you ask simple, straightforward questions. For example, the first question I suggest that you ask is, what are the Quiche Maya practices and teachings regarding marriage? Once again, I warned the missionary to make no explanation to Mr. Juarez, but merely to give him the direct question as I had suggested. This procedure the missionary followed. In response to the foregoing question, Mr. Juarez immediately replied, quote, "Marriage is the most sacred, the most revered, the most holy, and the greatest of all the religious teachings and practices in the Quiche Maya religion. We have two kinds of marriages. In one kind, the ceremony is performed by the priest. Only the good people marry in this kind of marriage. By good people, I mean those who do not get drunk, those who do not steal nor lie, and those who are morally clean. In brief, the people who live in accordance with all the teachings of the Quiche Maya religion. The priest performs the marriage ceremony for those good people, and when he marries them, they are married not only for this life, but for the next world also. They remain husband and wife forever. I was surprised, in fact, astonished to get such an explanation regarding the marriage custom of the Quiche Maya. And so I injected a question at this point. I said to the missionary, ask Mr. Juarez whether the Quiche Maya people ever got such a teaching and practice in their religion. Ask him if they got it from the Catholic Church. The reason I asked that question is because the Catholic religion is about the only one that has made much headway in Guatemala. The Quiche Maya have had some of the Catholic beliefs and practices superimposed upon their ancient paganized Indian religion. Gosh dang it. The missionary asked Mr. Juarez the question as directed, and Mr. Juarez immediately replied, "Oh no, certainly not. We did not get that teaching from the Catholics. The Catholics do not have that kind of marriage, and they never have had that kind of marriage." When Mr. Juarez explained, "We got that type of marriage from our ancestors. It came down from generation to generation through tradition. Our people practiced that type of marriage and had a belief in marriage after death many, many years before the Spanish conquest. In fact, it dates back as far as our traditions go. I've never read in the writings of archaeologists or other students in the Quiche Mayas that these people perform marriages uh, which they will endure after death. The fact that these people believe that their marriages continue for the next world would not be of interest to most people who contact them, and so authors would neglect to make a record of the practice even if they had been told that such existed. Although I was greatly surprised to find that the Quiche Maya practice a form of marriage, which they believe will endure throughout the next world, I was pleased to cam. I don't know if that's a typo. I was pleased to cam that such was their religion because I've understood that every time the gospel of Jesus Christ has been on the earth in its fullness, that God's true law of celestial marriage constituted part of that gospel. I also know that the true gospel of Jesus Christ um, was had in ancient America in the Book of Mormon days, and certainly the Nephites would have had the true order of celestial marriage. Thus, the Quiche Maya of Guatemala, being descendants of the Book of Mormon peoples, have preserved in their systems of marriage certain things which hold a resemblance to the true order of marriage as given by the Lord to the Nephites. Mr. Juarez continued his description of the Quiche Maya custom of marriage by describing the other type of marriage in a rather interesting terminology. He said, quote, "The other kind of marriage of our people call the renegade marriage. Those who receive this kind of marriage are the people that the priest will not marry because they are not good people. They do not live in accordance with the teachings of the Quiche Maya religion." Then he explained why they were not good people, pointing out that their lives were opposite to the lives of the people who were married by the priests for this life and for the world to come. He said, quote, "These people who receive the renegade marriage get drunk. They are not honest, they are immoral, and they are not people of good integrity. Their marriages last only until death. They are not married for the world to come." End quote. Mr. Juarez also described to us the various orders of the Quiche Maya priesthood. He stated that the priests were selected among the spiritual minded or psychic boys just as they merged into adolescence. And then he explained how these boys were trained for their appointments as priests. He also described to us the Quiche Maya's system of baptism, and the various other rites in their religion, as well as the tradition of their origin. Now, this kind of gets interesting here. As you probably already know, the Quiche Mayas have a tradition that they are descendants of Abraham and Jacob, being of the house of Israel. Their traditions maintain that their ancestors came from over the sea, and that they were brought to America by the Lord, being led by a prophet of God. They also maintain that the prophet had a peculiar instrument which guided them here, which instrument operated in accordance with the faith of the people. Certainly, one readily recognizes that instrument as being the Liahona, which is described in the Book of Mormon. All of the foregoing claims made by the Quiche Maya people are recorded in their early writings, and of course, they correlate quite closely to the account given in the Book of Mormon. The following day, after interviewing Mr. Juarez at Tatanikapan, the mission president, his wife, some missionaries, and I drove to Chichicastenango, Guatemala, for the purpose of attending a Quiche Maya religious service. At 8 o'clock in the morning, in the St. Thomas Cathedral, erected for these people by the Catholic Church, the Catholic priest conducted Mass for these people, it being a Catholic religious service. You know what? I think that cathedral was in this. No, maybe not. Excuse me. I thought that this was it. Okay. As soon as the Catholic Mass ended, they conducted their own religious services, which in general were definitely pagan, but in which I could also readily recognize some factors which evidently had their origin in Book of Mormon days. I was intensely interested to see 12 Quiche Maya men on the stand at the front of the cathedral presiding over their services. I asked a young Quiche Maya man who was serving as our guide who those 12 men were. He replied, "They are the 12 high priests who are in charge of the Quiche Maya religion." I then asked, "Why 12?" The answer I received was a custom, tradition. And then the guide explained that the 12 men were the best men that could be found among his people. He said that they were selected to be head over the church because of their good characters, because of their abilities of leadership, and because of various other good qualifications which he enumerated. This young man, who was serving as our interpreter, could speak English fluently as well as Spanish and Quiche. He informed us that he had very little schooling and had learned English and Spanish from the tourists. This fact indicated to me that he was very intelligent. Yeah, I'd say that. But I'd also say that's the only way you can really learn a language is you have to be immersed in it. You can't just learn it in a class, take tests, and then be able to speak. You might be able to kind of do it, but if you're going to become fluent, you have to be speaking it every day, and with ideally with native speakers. In a recent conversation with President Edgar Wagner of the Central American Mission, I stated that it was my opinion that if his missionaries could convert this Quiche Maya guide and several other young men of similar abilities, young men who could speak Spanish, English, and also Quiche, and then if they were called to do missionary work among the Quiche Maya people, they perhaps would make a marvelous contribution in taking the gospel to those people. Some of the elders of the United States could be assigned to serve as companions to the Quiche Maya missionaries for the principal purpose of giving them a basic understanding of the gospel. Then these Quiche missionaries, who would undoubtedly be favorably received by their own people, could easily obtain admittance into the homes of the best of the Quiche Maya families, perhaps even into the home of the 12 high priests who preside over their church. In this way, the gospel of Jesus Christ, with special emphasis on the Book of Mormon, could be taken to them who speak only Quiche. I believe that these people would readily recognize that the Book of Mormon was their book, since the traditions which they hold so sacred fit so well with the teachings of that book. At the present time, we are not able to do missionary work with the vast majority of the Quiche Maya because they do not speak Spanish or English, and our missionaries do not speak Quiche. These people are a very religious people, practicing their own religion according to their highly cherished traditions. I believe the day will come when missionary work will go forth with much power and success among these people. At the time we shall see, at at that time we shall see results similar to those which we read about in the Book of Mormon, when the sons of King Messiah did such phenomenal work among the Lamanites. Eventually, the day of the Lamanites will come when all of the predictions regarding them made by the holy prophets and recorded in the Book of Mormon will be fulfilled. It is my opinion that at that time, thousands and thousands of the Quiche Maya Indian people will join the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and will become valiant in the faith. In closing, I humbly ask God's choicest blessings to come upon the missionaries in the Central American mission and also upon the missionary work throughout the entire world. All right, and I'll end it there. So, yeah, that seems to have happened. Okay, let's go back to this Wikipedia article. So, what was it? Okay, so 1956 is when this talk was given, and it says here that in 1984 there was only 40,000 members, so it must have been even less in the 50s. So 40,000 in 84, and now 284,000. 284,000. And we're not done. We're not done until it's done. So it has risen phenomenally. Guatemala is high up on the list, both percentage wise and absolute number wise. Let's sort it again by the absolute number of members. And again, they are at the number 8 spot. Out of all the world, out of all the countries in the world, they are at the number 8 spot. How about we look at growth percentage? Or wait, yeah, let's do growth percentage. Let's see, Guatemala. Well, this one is kind of, growth percentage is not very good because it, forget it. I'm not going to explain it. Some of you know why, some of you don't. Let's see. How about percentage of total growth? Maybe that's a little bit more accurate, or what we're looking for. Yeah. Percentage of total growth. Guatemala is at 2.2. There are not very many countries above that. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So they are in the number 10 spot for percentage of total growth. So that is still really high. That's above Chile. Okay, that's above Chile. Chile has a higher percentage of the population, but in terms of percentage of total growth, Guatemala is higher. Whoa, look at the Philippines. They're at, wait, that's Brazil. Philippines is at a solid 7%. Brazil is at 11. Mexico is at 12. Okay, but yeah. So really interesting things. I had not really heard too much about this, and maybe you have, especially those of you who are in the debate between Heartland and Mesoamerica. Either way, I think that this would fit with either theory because, again, if you're a Heartland person, surely, again, they would have like migrated down into Central South America. I don't know though. I don't know all the peculiarities and technicalities of your arguments, and please, for heaven's sake, do not argue with me about it in the comments because I don't care. I really don't care. I just find that this is interesting, and it looks like his prediction came true, that many people joined and that Guatemala kind of stands out compared to other countries. All right, well, that's going to be it for this one. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something new. I might look at some more of this because when you look for Quiche in the what's it called, the Scripture Citation Index, there's actually a total of 4 talks that have to do with these people. The most recent of which is 1995, And I was kind of skimming through this, and there were some pretty interesting things in here, so I might have to do a separate video about this one in 1995. So, okay, but that's going to be it. So, if you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Please be kind. Please don't argue with other people. Just be nice. You can state your opinion, but just be nice. Don't be rude. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.